Okay, let's follow a little bit of Picasso's life here because it really had such a huge impact on the art world. It's worth mentioning the many transitions he made. This is the young Pablo Picasso here. They recognized talent in him right away, and he really did get known with the galleries fairly early in his life. Now, he did not enjoy formal training. In fact, from what I've read, he only stayed in the academic world for about a year before he dropped out because he was just not interested in the realistic approach to art. You can see the many styles a lot of these are not done by Picasso. When you do a search on the internet, all kinds of stuff comes up. But of course, this is one of his self-portraits that he did. So you can see he really was not interested in realism. There are a few drawings that he did in a realistic manner, so he could draw on that, but he just did not feel like expending his time on that. So the young Picasso is recognized as having lots of talent, and he's already getting commissions. He actually lived in Europe through two world wars. So you can imagine the effect. We'll see this later on when we talk in other chapters about the effect these world wars had on the arts. But you can imagine in the heart, in Spain, in Europe, it must have been really tough being an artist at this time period. But Picasso had lots and lots of gumption. So this is a survivor that managed to do whatever he needed to do, not always ethical, whatever he needed to do to survive as an artist. Now, when the war broke out, the the art market was really rough, and he starts identifying with poor, starving musicians and other people that you can imagine we're not doing real well. Oddly enough, a little trivia here, he also got a good deal on blue paint. And it was a time when you can imagine art supplies, we've dealt with this with the pandemic, right? It's very hard to obtain some items when there's a crisis in the country. So you can imagine a war did a lot of that. So it's very hard to obtain paint. He actually managed to get a big, huge box of blue paint. So he started these monochromatic paintings early in his years. And of course, the blue always, there's every color has a positive and negative to it. And of course, the blue here represents the sadness he's feeling, trying to make it. Yeah, you can imagine he really did identify with the poor and the starving because he's not doing well. He's poor and starving too. He also, let me get over here. He also identified with misfits. This is a fascinating story. Enough, these are some of the characters that you would find in traveling with the carnival. In particular, people like P.T. Barnum. These were amazing people that really did look out for these. Most of the documentaries you've seen of the people they interviewed that were labeled freaks. Terrible term there, but that's what they were labeled. And they had their own community, and they identified, and they actually got paid through some of these traveling circuses. So this is how they actually lived. And Picasso here, young and starving, he's identifying with these type of people because he's trying to make it as an artist, which is very similar to the way these people are scrapping through society. He gets a big break from this woman right here, Gertrude Stein, a very famous author and poet, very influential turn of the century woman, and really a great patron to the arts. This is the portrait that he did of Gertrude Stein. And, I love the way the face looks here. Doesn't it look like almost like she's wearing a mask? That's something that will, very common with Picasso's work. Uh, but also, it's because this face has been painted and repainted over and over again. He had a very tough time getting Gertrude Stein's likeness. And again, he dropped out of art school, so he wasn't interested in realism. So when he gets a commission for a realist type portrait, he has a bit of trouble with the face. Faces are very difficult to get somebody's likeness. It's usually a twitch of the nose or the way their hair's done or something that makes them unique that everybody recognizes. And a lot of people looked at this and said, gee, it doesn't look much like her. But of course, Picasso said, well, she'll look like that soon enough. But nonetheless, though, this was his very first break. And something happened here that really set him apart from his thinking in the past. When he was painting this and really struggling with the face, he gave up. He got exasperated and went on vacation. When he came back, Gertrude Stein was no longer available to sit for him. So he had to paint her from memory, which is another reason why you can see her likeness is quite different. So something sparked an idea there. While he was away on vacation, he visited an African art exhibit. This painting was heavily influenced by that visit to the exhibit that he saw. Notice, this actually means, by the way, the ladies of the evening or the ladies of Agnion. Pardon my pronunciation, is probably not the best. But nonetheless, notice how the women look very realistic on the left side, but they go to totally abstract on the right. Yeah, a lot of this had to do with his fear of the red light district and the horrors of syphilis that was being reported in the news at this time. So Picasso really was worried about that, and I think that influenced his work a lot too. But also, you see the African mask over here. So it was a heavy influence on me. Started thinking, wait a minute, why do we have to paint exactly what we see? Why do we have to paint things representational? Picasso saw that other cultures were abstracting the image and adding a sense of spirituality to it when they did that. So this really started him thinking, why do we have to do things outside? Why do we have to record exactly what we see? Why can't we get more mental and expressive about it? And of course, this is a time when a lot of artists are thinking this way, trying to redefine the idea of art. He idolized Paul Cézanne's work. These are some of Paul Cézanne's that you see. And this is probably his most famous one. And as you can see, he's already blocking off the picture here, which is something that Picasso was interested in doing, those multiple views that we see so often in Picasso's work, looking at it from different angles. So one of the key notes in your book about Paul Cézanne is that he shows still lifes from more than one viewpoint. We're looking straight at it. We might be looking at an angle at it. He's also simplifying these objects and turning them into basic geometric shapes. So instead of trying to get things realistic, they're doing just the opposite. They're breaking down the image and getting more expressive with the paint. So it's about the process instead of the actual finished product. So Picasso meets the young Georges Braque, and they start working on ideas about what they're going to eventually call Cubism. Cubism was actually a term coined by a critic who looked at their work and said, it looks like tiny little cubes. So they liked that, and they went, hey, that fits. Let's call it Cubism. One of the key points to Cubism is that they never really got rid of the image here. So this is called Man with a Guitar. We can see a little bit of a guitar here. We can see a little bit of a man here playing. It looks like somewhat of a face here. It's very abstracted. You know, another word for abstract is highly stylized. So it's highly stylized, and we see parts and elements, but we also see multiple views of the same image. This is another one of Georges Braque's that looks very much like we saw with Paul Cézanne. But notice how we're looking at building straight on the side, and this is how we view. This is their argument that this is how we view typical paintings or any kind of object. We don't stand right in front of it and stare straight on. We look at it at an angle. We look at it the side. We might, if it's an object we can pick up, we'll pick it up and look at the bottom or the top. So they're showing you multiple views in Cubism, and of course they're also breaking down that picture plane. They were not interested at all in a sense of space. So Georges Braque, also the co-creator of Cubism with Pablo Picasso, which already had started abstracting his work in many ways. Notice the multiple views here, a woman looking straight on and then a woman in profile. This is just a copy of one of Picasso's, but some of his work you see the woman looking straight on and you also see the woman in profile. He's getting very expressive with his work as well. So analytical cubism had to deal with painting and breaking down that image, but never really getting rid of the object, but abstracting it to the point where it's more about composition and the creative process. Look at this one here. So synthetic cubism had to do with collage. It was more the assemblage. At this time, assemblages become very popular, and Picasso created quite a few very ingenious assemblages, 3D relief work that came off the wall. And he actually pasted newspaper articles and all kinds of information about the news going on, but it's still in that Cubist style. So Cubism was applied to both 2D and 3D work. And it's going to influence futurism that we will study in another chapter. So this is a very famous image. Futurism has that same mechanical blocked off feel to it. And we will study a lot about Marcel Duchamp, another artist that came after Picasso's time, right around this. They lived at the same time period, but his career started a little later. And Nude Descending the Staircase is a very famous image. You can see the motion of a figure walking down a staircase. Yes, you can see that. An art critic said it looked like an explosion in a shingles factory. That was kind of a amusing comment about it, but you can, yeah, definitely see the motion. Marcel Duchamp was interested in something else that was being toyed with, invented at this time: motion pictures, animation. So this idea of what we call the persistence of vision, the fact that our brain records the last image and might connect it to the next image we see, is also what we're seeing here. So he's seeing the after effects. Put your hand up in front of your face and shake it, and you see the after image of where the hand was before. That is what we're talking about with persistence of vision. So these are things that they're just discovering, that the eye and the brain see together, these illusions that, that are going to lead to a major invention called animation or motion pictures. So you can see Cubism has a huge influence on the world of art coming up to the 20th century.